you may notice a little bit different quality in the voice. That's because I'm just using my couple of different cell phones to record this with instead of actually using a real microphone and recording in the Pro Tools. I figured I'd try using the cell phones just to see how the quality is, just so I can get an idea how I can do this mobily. Alright, so I don't have really that much to talk about. I'm kind of burnt out from all the videos I made in August, something like 14 videos. So because of all those videos, I'm sort of just burnt out and just sick of everything right now. But I did go ahead and finish up some 11 rack presets I was working on, and you can see them right here on the 11 rack. I have a pack called 22, another called FUBAR, and another called Circle. Altogether, it's 20 new rigs. Now, you're not going to be blown away by these rigs at all. All of these rigs are sort of inspired by that black metal attitude of, I don't want it to sound good, you know, of when they, in the late 80s and the early 90s, when they would go, these black metal guys in Norway would go into a studio, they'd say, give me the worst microphone you have, give me the worst amp, and give me the worst cabinet. Just put that worst microphone you have up to that, record it. After you're done, adjust the levels. That's it. That's the song. Don't make it sound pretty. Don't make it sound beautiful. Make it sound ugly. And that's sort of what inspired all of these different rigs. Also, some of the electronic music that uses really ugly sounds on their own and uses them in a musical way. So to kind of show you what I mean, I've got my guitar on here, and here is the switch. So, you know, not very great, but it's really kind of how you use these rigs. You can get all kind of different sounds out of them depending on, you know, what you want to do. All right. And also with the way these rigs are set up, all of the slots have an effect that has been set. Whether or not it's on or not by default, that's a different story. But everything has been set. So for instance, say this pale rig, you'll only see the amp and cab is on by default, okay? And then if I play that, really dirty, really hairy, right? But then I can turn on and off the effects to get a pretty much completely different sound. By the way, you're just hearing the output of my monitors recorded through these camera microphones. So the audio quality is not going to be great. It doesn't have to be for these, trust me. But definitely keep in mind that you can turn on and off the effects. I find a lot of times people will download a rig and they'll say, well, it doesn't sound good, and they'll just pass it by. But all of the rigs I've ever uploaded have effects that can be turned on and off. A rig is more than just what it is when you download it. It's the entire chain. You have to manipulate the entire chain to coax out exactly what you want to coax out. So just keep that in mind as well. Let's move on to something else. So the 22 rigs, the 22 pack, you know, 20 rigs total, but what I call the 22 rigs, they're all sort of in the same vein of just really weird, ugly sounds. That's weird. It's probably not going to sound that great on its own, but you can imagine that underneath some other maybe double-tracked heavy guitars or even clean guitars, you know what I'm saying? You just have to go through them, and these rigs are going to be all about how you use them. They're not set up to sound amazing right from the beginning, especially once we move on to the FUBAR, which if you know what FUBAR means, what the name implies, that's exactly how these rigs are going. That's exactly how these rigs are going to sound. For instance, now this is not going to sound good. Again, it's not supposed to. So that sounds like crap, but it's supposed to, because again, what I wanted to do was add another layer of color to what I had available in my presets bank. So if you think of it as painting, you're not going to use every color on your picture, more than likely, because then you'll end up with just, you know, big brown or black spot. And it's the same way with writing music. It's all in how you use these colors, and not every color, you know, you're not going to like every color. Not every color is beautiful. There's some colors that don't look good, but we still want to use them while we're painting, so to speak. So that's what the FUBAR rigs are set up to be. Go to the FUBAR Beauty rig, and of course it's called Beauty because it's the exact opposite. So that's really, really weird. Again, it's going to be all in how you use these, and they're not going to appeal to everybody, that's for sure. And then these circle rigs are like clean sort of style rigs. Again, everything has been set up and has a setting. So if we pop on the distortion, which I think all of these have the tri-knob fuzz, it's really going to make it sound really ugly. Of course, again, it comes down to how you use it. If you use it like this, it's probably not going to sound very good, but if you maybe want to use it for a solo, you could do that too. See what I'm saying? It's all going to be in how you use these rigs. So let me go to another one and just further explain the same point I've been explaining. So this is the Circle Blue. Right, so that sounds all right. We could switch my pickups. That's pretty good. So you can already do a lot of things with the way they're set up, but you can also turn things on and off if you want. All right, so that's basically it. Let me you know, like I said, they're not going to appeal to everyone, and that's totally fine. While I sat down to make these, I really realized how many rigs I've already made. I've made about 3,000 rigs, and every time I sat down to dial up a new sound, I would realize that this is already very similar to something I already have. So, you know, it's just difficult to come up with new sounds of something that's actually appealing to me, you know. It's another circle rig. Then if we want to make it sound really dirty, pop on the distortion. It's really going to be how you use these rigs because, well, let me choose a different one just for fun. Let's say, I don't know, Angel here, FUBAR. So not that great, but I can modify it with things I already have in here. Alright, so you can do some pretty cool things with it. So don't just judge them on face value of, boy, that's hairy and dirty, and that's, again, that's kind of what I was going for. But there they are, and they'll be up in the next day or so, hopefully. So you can download them, and this, believe it or not, will probably be my last set of 11 rack rigs. At least my last set that I set down to actually say, okay, I'm going to make new rigs. I'll still probably make a few more heavy style rigs, but they will be purpose built, meaning I'll use rigs I already have. So for instance, I play pretty much just metal, but you know, I do other things too and experiment, obviously, but you know, most of the time it's metal. So I like to use the lock rigs for my metal sounds. Now they may not work perfectly in every mix, but they sound good while I'm playing, and they're easy to play and easy to get my patterns down, my rhythm pattern that I'm playing over whatever drums at the time. So see what I'm saying? But if I sat down to make new rigs, I have so many, you know, like the lock rigs, the A is A rigs, and you may say, well, what about something that doesn't have so many effects? Well, if you're not aware, I have a pack of rigs called the WAR rigs, which WAR is raw spelled backwards, and I think it's every heavy amp with almost every cab and microphone combination possible, and completely raw, so doesn't sound that great, but it's actually, you know, kind of how an amp in the room would sound. Actually, a lot of times people get confused and say it doesn't sound like whoever's guitar tone. Like, yeah, because do you know how much processing has gone through that guitar tone, has been put on that guitar tone? Do you know how many times that has been tracked, maybe doubled up or tripled up, and EQ'd, compressed, limited? Then of course you have the bass in there, the drums in there, the vocal in there, all that together, and then compress all that together, and you're going to get a completely different end sound. When listening to isolated guitar tracks, believe it or not, the 11 rack is pretty much spot on its emulations. So if I make any more heavy presets in the future, what I mean by purpose built is I'll use a rig like, say, one of the lock rigs. I'll track with that, and then I'll of course record the dry guitar along with that. Then I can reamp through the 11 rack and then tweak either the rig I have, or load up a completely different rig, tweak that, or just create something completely for that exact song, so it would fit that exact song. Now you may be asking, you know, why don't you just create a rig that's perfect for a recorded tone? First off, that's, in my opinion, almost impossible when we're dealing with different guitars. I use only EMG pickups. If we transfer that to non-active pickups, even to other active pickups like the blackouts, if I set up a tone that worked pretty much perfectly, I don't think you could get it exactly perfect, meaning that it would require absolutely nothing placed on the guitar channels. I'm not sure if that would be possible, but you should be able to get close if you're making the rigs yourself for yourself. But as soon as you start sharing them, you're going to have to do a lot of different tweaking just because of different playing styles, different string gauges, different pickups, and different things you're playing over, obviously. So that's why I sort of tend to not EQ out, say, a lot of the top end, where you can dial back that top end pretty far, but when you go to actually play and you're laying down your riffs, this may be just for me, without that shimmery top end, I just can't feel it. You know, it doesn't feel like I'm playing a real guitar amp, because when you're in the room, you have that high end shimmer. Yeah, it adds hair on the top, maybe an ugly fizziness, but that's what a lot of real amps have when you're in the room. So that's why I usually don't make a lot of rigs that have, you know, the top end pulled way off and then the bottom 100 hertz just completely gone, because then I don't get the feeling of actually playing a guitar. And anyway, the way I like to work is I like to have something that sounds more like a real guitar amp in my ears or in my headphones, and then I do all that EQing and the compressing. I do that in Pro Tools afterwards, because that, in my opinion, because I don't pull out so much on the EQ from the rigs, it gives me more to work with once I'm in the DAW and everything's recorded. You see what I'm saying? So if there's too much hair, I can simply start pulling down that top end until I cut that out, maybe notch out a few frequencies around 4 or 5K. And then I can pull out the bottom end, you know, cut off somewhere between maybe 90, 100. I may want to have a nice, high pass on that or something. You have all kind of options, of course, depending on what plugins you have or what outboard processors you have. Obviously, that, you know, depends on that. But you can do a lot more if you have more in the actual tone. Of course, yes, you should get it close. I have a pack of rigs called, I think it's Ruin, and I set those up to be pretty much spot on. They can't be exactly spot on, but they're pretty much spot on to some actual recorded guitar tones that some pretty popular metal players used on their albums. And they are set up, like I said, pretty close. They're not exact, but pretty close, at least using my guitars, which all have EMG pickups in them. So you can always check out that Ruin pack if you want something that, believe it or not, it's analyzed by a frequency analyzer and, of course, by my ears. They're almost, I'm not going to say perfect, but they're almost spot on. to an actual recorded guitar tone. Again, a raw guitar tone, unmixed. Once they're mixed, they're going to sound probably, radically. I shouldn't say radically. They're going to sound a bit different once you're in a full mix and the final mastering process has, taken place. So no, I'm not giving up on the 11 rack, and I'm not selling it or anything like that. But sitting down to create presets, I just don't know what else to do, because I'll sit down and say, okay, this is the tone I want. Like I've said, I'll start making that tone. I'll say, well, this is already really similar to one of the other 3,000 I've already done. All I have to do is just tweak one that I already have. And is there really a reason to make a whole new set of rigs when all you have to do is do some slight tweaks to something that's already made? I just kind of think it's a waste of my time. But of course, if the 11 rack were to finally get another update, which I hope it does, I'm sort of doubting it, but it would be great if it happened, of course. But if the 11 rack gets another update, we get maybe some new cabs, some new amps, of course, new microphones. That would be great. And then of course we could make new rigs from there, for the sole purpose of making presets. But like I said, right now I'm pretty sure this is going to be the last pack of rigs I release that were made for the sole purpose of, increasing the amount of color that I have available. Like I said, I'll probably make some more, but they'll be purpose built for certain songs. And, I'll probably share those. I like to share everything that I make. There's so many great guitar amp simulator plugins, software out there available now that can really compete with the 11 rack, and in some cases can exceed what it can do simply because it has more effects available, more amps, more cabinets available. So I'm really getting into using software now in making music. However, like I said, I'm not getting rid of the 11 rack, and the reason why is even if I go to using actual software for the end product, I'll still use the 11 rack to track. Now you may say, why do that? Well, the answer is pretty simple. The 11 rack can do all of the guitar processing for me, so that takes a load off of my computer, meaning that I'm getting a better response, a better feel when playing. I haven't used any software-based amp simulator that felt as good to play as the 11 rack does. So for tracking, I'll still, of course, use the 11 rack. Now, the great thing about the 11 rack is, if you own 11 rack, you'll know this, is you can record the dry signal, just the dry guitar, along with your affected signal. Also, you don't even, if you know for certain that you're going to use a plugin for your end product, you don't even have to actually record the affected or dirty tone. You can simply set up an aux track for that, monitor it while you're playing, and then you can still, of course, record the actual dry track. Just mute that while you're recording, so you'll have your dry track. You won't have any extra tracks that you don't need. However, I would, of course, suggest that you actually record the tone, because you never know when that may come in handy. I'll, of course, use my 11 rack for the tracking tone, but I'll probably use software for the final product, or at least a combination of software and the 11 rack. Again, because we can record that dry signal, I can always reamp that signal through the 11 rack, and I can tweak the tone, the preset from there, or, like I said, create a purposely built preset just for a song using the 11 rack. Or what sort of complicates things and making more presets, at least for me, is I also use a program called Redwire's MixIR2, and that's a impulse response host, which means I can bypass the cabinet on the 11 rack and use a different cabinet, an impulse response, hosted in MixIR2. So if I set up a preset that's using MixIR2, then should I really share that preset? Because there'll be so much that would have to go along with it. There would be a list of things you would have to have in order to get that preset to even sound close to what I would be using a an impulse response host. Now, if at some point we were able to get impulse responses directly within the 11 rack, that would definitely be a game changer and would open up so many more tonal possibilities if we could actually load impulse responses right within the 11 rack. But back on topic to actually using the 11 rack to track the guitars in the recording process. And like I said, we'll have that dry guitar track as well. So that's the great thing about the 11 rack. I don't actually have to use that recorded or monitored tone while I'm playing. I'll just use that dry track, and all I simply have to do is place a plugin, whatever plugin I want, Amplitude, Guitar Rig 5, the 11 plugin, Revolver, whatever you want to use. Just place that plugin right on the dry guitar track, and there you go. Go ahead and set up your rig. Maybe you have a preset for that already. Just pull that right up, and you're good to go. It's that easy when you are using the 11 rack. And the best part is, if you use the 11 rack, it's going to feel better when you're playing. So even if the tones in the 11 rack aren't exactly what you want, it's still a great box to have. You know, Sweetwater actually has a deal right now. I think it's $648 for the 11 rack, and that comes with Pro Tools 11, and that's insane to get Pro Tools 11 and the 11 rack for like $650. Now, I don't know how long this deal is going to last. And like I said, even if you don't like the tones in the 11 rack, or I shouldn't say like, because you will like them, but if it's not perfect, you can still track with it, but just record that dry sound and then use another plugin once you get to the mixing stage. You know, it's that easy, and you just got to trust me that it feels so much better to play through a dedicated guitar unit than playing through the computer, which involves usually lots of latency. And even if there's not that much latency, the feel is just not quite the same, at least to me. You know, the 11 rack is a great unit. It may be 5 years old, but I think it's still worth the purchase. You will find stuff that you absolutely love about it, and depending on what you want to do, it may not be able to do everything perfectly, but it will definitely get you through. You should definitely be able to get, if you like to play out live, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get good live tones from it, good tones for recording with. Again, this all really depends on what you want to do, but like I said, I'll just go back and say it for like the third time. Using the 11 rack to record with is an absolute dream. The feel, the sound, everything about it, perfect. You can record your dirty sound and your dry sound, so once you get to the mixing stage, you're not limited by anything. You don't have to say, oh, well, I used the 11 rack to track, but now I want to use Amplitude 3, so now I have to retrack my guitars. No. Not with the 11 rack. As long as you have recorded those dry guitar tracks along with your dirty guitar tracks, just mute those dirty tracks, hide them, deactivate them, delete them, whatever you want to do. Just get them out of the way, pop on your plugins on your dry guitar tracks, and then go from there. You don't have to re-record anything. Once you have the performance, you don't have to go back and redo it, because the 11 rack, you can record that dry sound. So that's why I would still recommend getting the 11 rack today. There's so many things you can do with the 11 rack that I could ramble on about it for hours, but I think I better stop now. I don't really have anything for the information section, like I usually have a bunch of links or free stuff that's given away somewhere. I don't really have anything. I just thought I'd talk about the 11 rack for a while. I'm kind of burnt out on making videos from making so many last month, but I will upload those 11 rack rigs. Again, don't be expecting anything spectacular, because they're really just extra colors for your tonal palette, and it's going to be all in how you employ them. You know, these rigs are all about being creative. That's what I wanted to do. Make something that was ugly and dirty, but still creative, that you can apply here and there, sprinkle it here and there if you want. Or you can make your whole song like a black metal song from 1989, just dirty, ugly, doesn't sound good. Everybody knows it sounds bad, but there's still something that's intriguing about it. But that's it. So like, dislike, comment, subscribe, yada yada, whatever. I'm out.